Hello, welcome back. Well, this is an exciting lesson because we are halfway through with the course and halfway through with the play. So we talked about balcony scene and they looked about imagery of light. Now we will start with Friar Laurence long monologue. If you haven't read that yet, I want you to take a look at it. Then we'll try to figure out what exactly he's saying. It's Act 2, Scene 3. Essentially what Friar Laurence is doing, he is using an extended metaphor. So he has a metaphor of man is like nature. Then he keeps talking about this metaphor for his entire monologue. I think it's a real interesting scene, very beautiful, and he's using an extended metaphor to talk about a relationship between vice and virtue. So virtue is the part of us when we do something good, and vice is a part of us when we do something bad. But the really interesting thing that Friar Laurence says is at line around 17 or so. He says, virtue itself turns vice, being misapplied, and vice sometimes by action, dignified. In other words, sometimes we do something that we think is good, but the outcome is bad. And sometimes people do something that is bad, but the outcome is bad. We might call it unintended consequences. And this is a lot like nature. The metaphor that he is using is the idea that we too, he says in line 24, in men as well as herbs. So he's talking, maybe you see a mushroom and it looks good, but it is poison. Something doesn't taste good, but they're good for us. Some kids don't like to eat vegetables, maybe like spinach, but tastes bad, but it's good for you. He takes that metaphor and says that it's kind of like us, very interesting, and I recommend reading it closer. And then Romeo comes into the scene and he wants to get the friar to help him to meet with Juliet so that they can get married. I think this is really interesting because it sort of ties back to the costume party that Romeo went to, where Juliet says to him, "Oh, pilgrim." And I talked about that seems to be the spiritual aspect of love. And now here's Romeo who wants to get married. And who does he go to? He goes to the friar, a symbol of spirituality. And we see that in the same scene where on line 46, where on a sudden one has wounded me, that's by me wounded, both are remedies within thy help and holy physic lies Friar Laurence. And who is Friar Laurence? At first he seems like an old man in the garden, just a busybody, but actually I think that he's a symbol of wisdom in the play. And not only he says a lot of smart things about virtue and wise, but he also seems wise, because he uses a logical framework called a syllogism. Now, syllogism is kind of a simple logical statement. The most famous one, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Friar Laurence uses the syllogism too, which I think adds to the idea of him being wise. It happens around lines 30, 28 or so. He says to Romeo, what early tongue so sweet saluted me? Young son, it argues a distempered head so soon to bid good morrow to thy bed. Care keeps his watch in every old man's eye, and where care lodges, sleep will never lie. And then he goes down line 35, therefore, thy earliness doth me assure, thou art approused with some distemperature. So, if you are up so early, all young men do not get up early. Romeo is a young man, therefore he has not woken up early. In other words, Romeo has been up all night. Have you been up all night? Yes, with a woman. And Friar, oh no, what have you been doing? But it's not Rosalind, it's Juliet now. And this is where on line 64, 63, Friar Laurence says, young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. So it's just if she's beautiful in Romeo, no, it's not like that. And Friar says, your love for Rosalind, for doting, not for loving. So we spoke about love, different kinds of love, like doting, infatuation versus real love. And Romeo says, no, it's not that. Line 81, I pray thee, chide me not. Her I love now, doth grace for grace and love for love allow. The other, Rosalind, did not. The point here is he's saying, I loved Rosalind, but she didn't love me back. But now I love someone and she does love me back. This is another type of love, unrequited love. When I love someone and they don't love me back. So again, we're seeing this idea throughout the play that there are different kinds of love: traditional, youthful, short-lasting, long-lasting, etc. Then we kind of find out why is it that Friar Laurence is going to help Romeo to marry Juliet, when actually he knows that it's probably not a good decision. You love this person, you love that person. What Friar Laurence tells us, line 87, he says, for this alliance, getting married to Juliet, may so happy prove to turn your household's rancor to pure love. If I can get Romeo to marry Juliet, a Capulet and a Montague, maybe I can end this long ancient grudge. And here is the idea that he says in monologue. Virtue misapplied can turn to vice. He has a virtuous idea of helping the families overcome their long feud, but when you finish reading the play, that you know that virtue is misapplied and it turns into vice. Okay, moving along there, let's go into scene 4. And for scene 4, I want to introduce a new idea. The idea here about different ways of reading. There are basically 2 ways of reading. One way you can call a serious encounter or a serious way of reading, and the other a casual encounter or casual way of reading. So when I read something for fun, like if you enjoy Harry Potter or some other literature, you don't think so much about it, you just read it and enjoy it, and that's casual. When you read something for school, we don't really do it casually, we do it seriously. So there are 2 kinds of readings, and for us we're doing serious reading, but there are different kinds of serious readings too. So the way I want to look at the next scene in the play is there is one way of serious reading when we look at the function. So when we meet Mercutio and Benvolio here, and then the Romeo comes in, that has a function in the text. And the function, I think, is that it's to change the mood of the text. The text has been very serious so far, and now when Romeo shows up, we see here for pages are this funny little conversation when they play Pink for Flower, right? So a lot of just plain fun. Sure wit, old single soul jest, solely singular for the singleness. It's just fun. But what happens, the function of it, it makes it shift in the mood. And the moods shift when it's complete, when we look at Act 2, Scene 4, lines 87. Mercutio says, now art thou sociable, change in mood. Now art thou Romeo, now art thou what thou art, by art as well as by nature. A shift in the mood. And then shift in Romeo's character. I think that's one of the functions. Another function going on in the scene is when Mercutio is talking to Benvolio. And at line 18, Benvolio asks Mercutio, what is Tybalt? In other words, what is his function in the text? And Mercutio says, he is the prince of cats. He is good with the swords, with fights. And the function here is foreshadowing what's going to happen in the next act. It's going to be a big fight, and 2 people are going to die. That's a function of this scene. Let's look at another function here, just moving along pretty quickly. When we're going to around line 99 about the nurse and Peter, and there is a lot of funny repartee between Mercutio and the nurse. And then line, let's jump ahead here, 158. The nurse says to Romeo, and she has a plan about how to meet, and Romeo tells the plan. And stay, good nurse, behind the abbey wall. Within this hour, my man shall be with thee. And bring the cords made like a hacked stair, like so. He will bring the ladder. The function here is to move the plot forward to get them going. How are we going to meet? Very easy. There is a ladder. Go there, do that, and we'll meet and we'll be able to get married. So that's the function of this scene here. So that's before we get into scene 5. Let's take one more look at this way of reading. So when we're looking at function, I notice foreshadowing in the scene, function of the scene, the shift in mood, function of the scene, and then moving the plot forward, that's the function of the scene. Another way to do serious reading is to look for specific devices that are being employed by the author. I just want to take a quick look at one of the specific things that he is doing, and this is classical allusions. So in Shakespeare's time, a lot of writers, if not all of writers, are referring back to the classical writers. That means the Greeks. And we see this in Mercutio in line 42 and 43, and this is scene 4. He compares all the other women, not the Juliet, to Dido, Cleopatra, Helen, and all those specifically classical characters. You might know Helen of Troy. She is from Holmes' work, and Helen was the most beautiful woman in the world. These are allusions to classical ideas. We see another one with Juliet when she speaks, and she alludes to Cupid on line 8. She does it again and again, and then she alludes to Phoebus. That's another kind of reading when we're looking for and trying to find some devices. This particular device was the classical allusion. So we've seen some of the functions of the scene. For the next lesson, I want to move forward to scene 5, where Juliet is waiting for the nurse to return. Okay? See you later.